Story 1. Cryptocurrency. What Cardi B is saying. Their emotions. The ending of Donnie Darko. Story 2. To paraphrase Richard Feynman, I understand quantum physics better than most, yet I do not understand it. Story 3. The show Hoarders doesn't prepare you for walking into those places at all. Story 4. Introversion and social anxiety are not things one can simply snap out of. Story 5. Research and statistics. Most people do not actually understand how research is done and what peer review actually means. Story 6. Manners are what anyone can learn to achieve a result. Thoughtfulness goes deeper. Good manners mean respecting others the way you would like to be treated. Be the example you wish others to follow. Story 7. Life is like a game of chess. I don't know how to play it. Story 8. How sugar works in the human body. Many people believe that sugar causes hyperactivity in children or leads to diabetes. Story 9. Use the search bar on this subreddit. The same question was asked a couple of days ago. Story 10. When someone has already repeated themselves twice and you do not want to make them say it a third time. Story 11. Economics and finance. While people who understand finance have a leg up on the real way the world works, those at the top of the field likely know the system is corrupt and should be illegal, and they should be in jail. Story 12. The differences between lifestyle diseases, chronic diseases, and one-time events, and the approaches to achieve the best outcomes. Story 13. From experience, most people do not know themselves. What drives them? What they like and want. They simply exist without wanting to dig deeper and recognize their qualities and flaws. Story 14. People who say quantum physics should leave. Most people, I assure you, do not pretend to understand quantum physics. Story 15. I think about taxes. Everyone nods and pretends they know what's going on when someone mentions deductions or filing status. But deep down we're all just hoping TurboTax does not betray us. Story 16. Evolution. We are not more evolved than other species. We occupy a different niche. Survival of the fittest is not about long-term survival of the individual. It is about the survival of genes that produce the greatest reproductive success. Evolution is a theory, but that does not mean it lacks evidence. A theory is a well-substantiated explanation for phenomena. Evolution is not described as a fact because in scientific terminology fact is not a formal category. Story 17. The differences between communism, socialism, and fascism are often misunderstood. Politicians, news anchors, and people on the street frequently use the terms interchangeably. Story 18. Love, finances, discipline, willpower, authenticity, being genuine, being raw, mental illness, struggling, God, faith, people, minds, corruption, the government, being kind, caring, respectful, strong, compassionate, and most of all being themselves. Story 19. What their toddler kids, nieces, nephews, and grandkids are saying. Oh wow, neat. That sounds fun. Story 20. Everything to do with Israel versus Palestine. If the greatest minds in the world have not been able to negotiate a lasting peace, the average dipshit with colored hair, ear loops, and patchy tattoos is not going to understand more than what is fed to them by the accounts they follow on social media. Story 21. Mental health. Everyone has an opinion, but few truly get it. Story 22. Estimating things is difficult. As a species, we are terrible at estimating large numbers, and when a process involves several steps to go from one number to another, we are likely to miss the mark if we rely on gut feeling. This has been scientifically proven. If you ask around, everyone thinks they are the exception or that they are okay at it. Story 23. Your heart is more like plumbing than your intestines. It is a pump that moves blood through large vessels into progressively smaller ones and back to the heart. An aneurysm is like a bulge in a tire or garden hose, and the reason for them is the same. I am not sure I answered this question correctly. I am high. Story 24. United States illegal immigration. Both sides of the debate have major misunderstandings. Two quick examples. 1. The tough on immigrants crowd misunderstands that undocumented immigrants are not, in fact, consuming Medicare and Medicaid at the levels they assume. For an undocumented immigrant to fraudulently use those programs, they would have to have a stolen or borrowed card, which does happen but is likely to be detected. 2. The easy on immigrants crowd does not understand the scale of the issue. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States, which is more than the entire population of Michigan. That is a large force of wage suppression and erosion of workers' rights, and it represents billions of dollars yearly in unpaid income taxes. Both groups misunderstand the sources. By far, the largest source of that 11 million is not people who crossed the border illegally, but relatively well-off foreigners who entered legally on tourist, student, or temporary work visas and, when those visas expired, chose not to leave. They are overwhelmingly economic opportunists, not refugees or asylum seekers. Story 25. I do not know much about how central banks work. Story 26. When you are used to distances in miles and someone suddenly uses kilometers, you just pretend you know how far that is. Story 27. Politics, religion, parenting, adult responsibilities, love. Story 28. Time zones are overcomplicated. In your life, you only need to know 2 time zones. The one you live in, which is your local time, and how many hours you are ahead of or behind Coordinated Universal Time. Communicate in Coordinated Universal Time. For example, I am in New Zealand. We are currently 13 hours ahead of Coordinated Universal Time during Daylight Saving Time. If I need to tell you an event is at 5 p.m. local time, I say it is at 4 a.m. Coordinated Universal Time. If you live on the United States West Coast, you know you are 7 or 8 hours behind Coordinated Universal Time. I do not need to account for that. You convert 4 a.m. Coordinated Universal Time to your local time, which is 9 p.m. Think in local time, speak in Coordinated Universal Time. It is that simple. Yet international release schedules often list multiple local times instead of using a single universal reference. Story 29. If you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics. Richard Feynman. Story 30. Know your own anatomy and basic health and medical information. Ask your doctor questions. My sister saw her doctor and forgot she had been told she might have a large fibroid on the outside of her uterus. How she forgot is beyond me. I remembered and told her what I knew about fibroids and about a surgery where I was the second scrub tech and they removed a very large fibroid. I will spare you the details. Years later, after a miscarriage, she had it evaluated and needed surgery to remove it. I started asking her questions and she did not know what was going on. Is it laparoscopic or an open procedure? How big is it? Could it affect fertility? Is it a cervical biopsy or just the fibroid? Will they use general anesthesia for the biopsy? She did not know. It turned out to be a polyp on the inside of her uterus. I wish I could go to these appointments with her. It is just nuts to me. Story 31. Evolution. It is becoming clear to me lately that a lot of people do not understand how evolution actually works. Story 32. Weight loss and nutrition. It is calories in, calories out. Cool. Let us shut down that entire field of science then, since it is all figured out. Meanwhile, what hormones induce satiety? What gene alterations affect that? What is non-exercise activity thermogenesis and what genes affect it? What is infectobesity and adenovirus 36? What is the carbohydrate and insulin hypothesis? And so on. Story 33. The plot of Tenet. If you pretend to understand it, you are an asshole. Story 34. It is especially obvious when people with zero knowledge of the subject try to explain the history of my country to me. Story 35. Income tax. Many people think that if they enter a higher tax bracket, all their earnings are taxed at the higher rate rather than only the portion that falls into that bracket. Story 36. Taxes frustrate me when people confuse withholdings with paying taxes on their paychecks. Another pet peeve is coworkers who say they do not work overtime because their paycheck would be smaller, claiming the extra is all taken in taxes. Withholdings may increase, but working extra hours will not reduce your net pay unless there is a serious payroll error. I do not want to have to explain tax brackets again. Story 37. Climate change affects many people, perhaps not most, but far too many. Story 38. Teacher pay. Teachers work the contract days but are paid over a 12-month period. They receive pay during the summer for work that was already completed and are not compensated for work done outside contract time. Any work done at home is unpaid overtime. Most teachers are underpaid for the degrees and responsibilities they hold. Teachers often take pay cuts when they move districts because schools only recognize a certain number of years or have a maximum placement on the pay schedule for incoming teachers. It is all bullshit. Story 39. What World War II was about and what does and does not make someone a Nazi. Story 40. The English language is largely used by native speakers. Story 41. Mental health, specifically anxiety. People often say everyone gets anxious, but not everyone has an anxiety disorder. Story 42. I would not say most people, but many lay people think they understand quantum physics. I know someone who holds a doctor of philosophy in the field, and they freely admit that it is not understood by science. The mathematical framework accurately predicts outcomes, but no one knows why it works. When someone claims they understand it, I usually assume they only think they do or are not telling the truth. Story 43. Quantum physics is like a party where everyone is high, but nobody wants to admit they are stoned. Story 44. Food. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Where it comes from, down to the farm, the country of origin, and its journey to market. What is in it? All the label items we cannot pronounce. What it does to us from a scientific perspective, including inflammation, pharmaceutical weight loss pills to counter large food corporations, and the weather. Story 45. How to read a recipe book. Countless employees say they know how, but when it comes to putting it into practice, it is a disaster. Story 46. How to read, process, and form an opinion about scientific papers and data. Quantum physics, especially claims such as the world is a simulation and jumping to your best timeline promoted by pseudoscience proponents. Story 47. There is an actual difference between Democrats and Republicans. Story 48. Ice Age mice and a monkey say moo, moo, momo, exclamation mark twice, doo-doo. Story 49. Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. I can confirm that I understand it, although I sometimes doubt myself. Story 50. All the topics you are not supposed to discuss at family gatherings, in a bar, or in the workplace: religion, politics, and a bit of finance. Story 51. Without a doubt, marginal taxation is the deciding factor. I know this because the Republican Party not only still exists but continues to win majorities. If every American truly understood the concept, it would be finished as a national force in a generation and extinct in two. Story 52. Depression. I have been living with depression for over 30 years and have been on more than a dozen different medications. I have been hospitalized at least 3 times. It is hereditary and not going to go away. Do I have good days? Of course. Overall, I have had many more bad days than good. I bribe myself sometimes just to leave the house, for example with a trip to Starbucks so I do not have to cook. I try to take care of myself. I do not always win the small battles, but I am still winning the overall war. Story 53. I pretend to understand someone if they repeat themselves twice and I still do not understand what they say. Story 54. The English language, our government, the Bill of Rights, and the law. Story 55. Parenting. Unless you actually have children or have helped raise them, you do not understand. I was guilty of it myself before my daughter was born. Story 56. Many people pretend they understand love. They act as if they have it all figured out, but deep down they have no idea. Story 57. The way you phrase a question when searching will determine the results you get. Story 58. Most medical and scientific research is funded by organizations seeking specific outcomes, and much research goes unpublished if the results are not the desired ones. Story 59. National Football League referees explaining which penalties are legal and which are illegal. Story 60. Every time I see one of those "wow, that puts it into perspective" comments under posts linking one historical event to another, I either get whiplash at how little people know about what I thought was taught in school, or I agree, yes, that does put it into perspective. I really do not know much about that. Also, basic security and information technology, and I mean basic parental controls, how to open your router settings page, how to look up an error code that is on your screen when you took a screenshot to ask about it, how to identify the components in the computer sitting in your room right now, how to type the device identifier for your device onto Reddit so other people can help you, how to kill a task that will not stop running, and more. I still try to help without getting mad because 10,000 people learn something for the first time every day, and I do not want to leave a sour taste in their mouth the first time they learn. Story 61. Rules of Cricket? What does the word guys actually mean? When used by some middle-aged people, as in guys and dolls, it can create the wrong impression and make them sound like complete idiots. The nonce formerly known as Prince? Story 62. I have mental health and neurological disorders. As someone with both, I constantly hear the phrase, "I get it," from people who are then appalled when they see how I actually have to live my life. Most of them have no idea. They think it is all some grand joke. Story 63. Law. If your only exposure to the law and the legal process is television shows, you know less than nothing. Please stop telling people that one person should sue another. Story 64. My mom, whenever she tries to argue with me about temperature, especially water temperature. Story 65. I hate people who act like they know you better than you know yourself. Story 66. Many people say they understand others' feelings and experiences, but they do not. They are unaware of how broken our justice system is and how corrupt most politicians are, which is why we are not progressing. Story 67. Mental illness, especially obsessive-compulsive disorder. I've worked with people who suffer from it. It drives me fucking nuts when people casually say they have obsessive-compulsive disorder just because they like having a clean house or organizing things. Story 68. Freedom of speech. Someone dressed up as a Nazi and went to a bar. People were upset that the bar let him in and did nothing. The bar later apologized, and commenters argued that criticizing him violated his freedom of speech. Story 69. Economics shows that even those of us with advanced degrees who work in the field are affected. Story 70. Psychology. I don't think we collectively know enough about our brains to be altering our brain chemistry, even with alcohol. Story 71. Trauma and abuse are difficult because not everyone shares that baggage. Sometimes your friends are also friends with the people who traumatized you, and when you break down to them about it, they do not see the problem because they have never been treated that way. Story 72. Health. I heard some people believe sugar causes diabetes, which doesn't make sense. Story 73. Parenting. They don't come with a manual. That may have been true when your great-grandparents said it to your grandparents, but there are hundreds of books by qualified experts that can improve the odds of raising a self-sufficient, self-reliant person with integrity, decency, and compassion. Not everyone who can have a child should have a child. If you are planning to have children, seek therapy to heal wounds inflicted by well-intentioned but ignorant parents. Please break the cycle. Story 74. Democracy. I heard a researcher claim that their surveys show that many Americans think it just means patriotism. Story 75. The people who accompany the Palestinian protesters have no idea what they are supporting. Story 76. Fascism. I seriously doubt most people know the actual definition of fascism these days. I'm considering walking around with a 1979 Webster dictionary so people can get an unbiased look at the definition without anyone claiming it is woke or edited by Google. Is fascism inherently evil, or is it only evil when it no longer benefits you? Story 77. The Dodgers are not ruining baseball. The cheap owners are to blame. Story 78. Polyamory is not the same as being open, cheating, or purely sexual relationships. If I have to explain this one more time, I am going to lose my mind. Story 79. Their religion. The staggeringly large number of Christians who loudly insist that gay people and non-believers will go to hell, despite Scripture itself saying nothing of the sort unless you count mistranslations and old laws we no longer follow. The Bible repeatedly says it is not up to us to judge or persecute others. If Jesus were to come back right now, many tables would be flipped. Story 80. Some people think they understand Trump and then support him. They don't. He lies. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.